What's up guys, Bilal from OmniEarth.com here, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about the 5 things I've struggled with the most in indie game development, so let's get right into it. So number 5 is balancing design with development. And what I mean by that is the difference between game design and game development. So sometimes I'll design a concept quickly or briefly, and then I'll start developing it and end up locked in kind of this development of a feature that maybe is or maybe isn't that great. To give you an example, let's say just the input system of a certain game, maybe I'm working on that and like I design it ahead of time and say, well, in the case of our current game, you would have to move the mouse to rotate the ship, or sorry, to rotate the ship and camera rather than independently rotate the ship's weapons. That's something that maybe in the future after testing, people would decide they don't like it so much, and that's something to switch around. The way that I think I should get past, or one in general should get past the problem of like balancing this design and development, where you might get locked into developing something that's not so great and you might want to change in the future, and you're wasting time on it, and then you end up with this rigid game. I think to avoid that, it's a good idea to get feedback early on, not on the entire game but rather on a certain feature. So if your control is something that's in question, I would say make the control portion of the game, put it into its own, separate like sub-module, and have people test that out and get back to you. Number 4 is Impostor Syndrome. Impostor Syndrome is probably something you've heard about before, and basically it's thinking you're an imposter in that you think that you're invalid or that you don't provide as much value as somebody else doing a similar thing to you. So for example, in my case, general, and I think it's very common in software engineering in general, is that you might be working on something and then see somebody else do a much better job, and then you think, oh, well, what am I even doing? So for example, with a video game, you might be working on a game and might reach some certain amount of progress in the game's development, right? So say you're 50% done with the game, and then you're like, oh man, I'm loving this game, this is great. And then all of a sudden you hop onto Twitter, you hop onto Steam or whatever, you look at the new releases, and you start seeing stuff like Ori and the Blind Forest, and Braid, and what else? Like just these really, really high quality indie games that you question how they're not AAA, and then you're like, oh man, how am I ever gonna make it? My products are like invalid. With Imposter Syndrome, I think there's a simple answer to getting past it, and it takes practice in general. The idea behind it is, what I think about Imposter Syndrome is that as soon as you take comparison out of the picture when it comes to, let's say, how good you think you are as a developer, how good you think your game is, whatever. As soon as you take out comparison in whatever it is that you're working on, I think that really takes Imposter Syndrome like out of the picture. It doesn't make it won't make it ever disappear. Nothing will ever make Imposter Syndrome disappear except for it. Simply it's one of those things you kind of ignore. But I think the idea behind it is, like I said, as long as you stop worrying about comparison and just trust that if you put in the work that your product will be good enough, or maybe not even good enough. Maybe it'll reach the expectation that you have for it, as long as you put in the appropriate amount of work for it. As long as you live by those standards instead of comparing your game constantly, then you'll have like a more realistic viewpoint of your capabilities and what the game you're releasing is, and you won't have to worry about oh man, I'm not good enough. You won't have to have all these negative thoughts in your head. So number three, there's a 3 for you, is availability to work. And what I mean by that is having the time, basically, to work on games, because most likely you're not already running a profitable indie game development business. For example, my games do not make a profit right now. Or they do make a profit, but they don't, they're not a sustainable profit. I don't personally have the time to only work on games, and that's okay. Like I do a lot of things and I enjoy all of them. Like for example, I do this channel, there's more Unity, like I'd like to teach like Unity at a higher level than just these kind of superficial tutorials and courses. I want to go like deeper into that. I just find that when you have to, for me, when you have to work a full-time job and you do all these other things too, it can be difficult to find the available amount of time, to put into the game. The way that I usually get around that is I do 2 things mainly. So one is I try to clear these negative thoughts, and rather than say clear, I'd rather prefer to say I allow the negative thoughts to leave on getting anxiety from thinking, oh, I'm not working enough, I'm not going to finish this game fast enough, and I'm not going to, move on to the next game, and so on. I think that what's good is to allow those thoughts to leave, in that you listen to them, you appreciate that they're there, or rather you appreciate their existence, not that you enjoy them, but rather you understand that they are there, and then you simply dismiss them in that it's like, yeah, sure, maybe it's a little annoying that I'm not getting so much, like I'm not getting the like a 9 to 5 amount of time in on this game. I'm gonna put in whatever time I can, and it's either gonna work out or it's not, and then I'll release it. So that's number one, is basically just let your negative thoughts, forget about them. And then number two, plan it out. Like make a schedule and have an idea of what you're going to get done and when you're going to get it done. I mean, for me, I use Hack and Plan now, but I used to use Asana, and so I use Jira work and stuff like that. I mean, you can always use a planner, and maybe you don't even have to go that advanced in planning. You could use Trello or write it down on a piece of paper. Basically, the idea is just have a plan of what it is you're going to do, and don't just plan out what you're going to do. Also, try to get an idea of your schedule, like when you're going to be working on the game. Like what does your day look like? You can shape your day out to be, however you want it to. So basically, somewhere in your week or in your days, include a piece of that or a chunk of that where you're working only on the game that you're focused on. That's kind of an important one. It's kind of one of those more pressing ones, and by the way, these are in ascending order. Number two is kind of piggybacking off of that one. Here I'm going to use all the terms. Segueing into the next one by piggybacking off of the previous one. There you go. So basically, this next one is creating a profitable system, is what I call it. And what I mean by that is creating a system where this is kind of a more businessy side of this, where you think, I do a certain thing for a certain amount of time and I get this expected result from it. So it's kind of that idea of having a plan for a product, or I guess a line of products, or I guess the plan for the whole business. Who knows? Maybe it's called a business plan. So basically, the idea is that in that plan, it's kind of the reason I struggle with it is because it's a little bit difficult to be 100% sure about how much work you have to put in and what you're going to get out of it. For me, I mean, of course, like the games that I've released it wasn't so much systematic as much as it was, I want to work on this one and I want to get one out faster, so I'll work on this one within this scope. That's why, previous games that I've worked on were much shorter, kind of, mobile oriented. I think this can be, something pretty difficult to do, especially in video games. It's something that really does take planning. I think to get around it, basically, there's two things you can do. So one is the one I've been saying this whole time, which is basically have an idea of how much time you're willing to spend on something and what your expectation of what you're going to get out of it is. Not wishful thinking. Don't say, oh, I'm just going to work on this and everything's going to be great. No, think of it in a way as, who's actually going to buy this game? Who are you targeting it towards? And how many of them are going to purchase it? When are they going to purchase it? What price is it going to be at? Because people buy things mostly when they're on sale, for example. And get some idea of how much you actually expect to get out of it. So that's number one, is the planning. Number two is I'm blanking. So one second, let me give this chair a couple spins until I can remember what exactly it was that I was thinking about. Okay, so creating a profitable system. So one of them is planning, the other one is research. Yeah, right. So I was going to say, for number two, basically research by releasing games and by going onto forums. So if you go and actually see what people are talking about, see what kind of games they play, try to get an idea of which kind of people are the people playing those games. Like, for example, who's playing Don't Starve? Probably, younger people. Probably people playing with their friends, probably people playing with their families, significant others, etc. They get it through Steam, probably PC gamers for the most part. I mean, I don't know now actually if the game is cross-platform, if it got released. But sorry, I'm talking about Don't Starve Together, not just Don't Starve. But yeah, the point remains. They're probably younger people, maybe in their late 20s to teenagers to late 20s, I should say. Sorry. Anyway, and so they're probably playing games like that, those multiplayer co-op games where they just want to have a good time with their friends or family and so on. That's one way you can do it. Go and see which people are playing games that are released now, And the other thing you can do, by the way, there are a lot of businesses dedicated to this. It's called R&D, research and development. Research by developing certain games. So develop a game, let's say, and try to make it a prototype. Even you can send out a prototype, or you can release a full game and send that out as long if it's something short, and see what the market is, and then see if people play it, see which kind of people are going to be playing it, and so on. So plan, then research, then create a profitable system. And the reason that's important is because if you don't create a profitable system, then it's pretty hard in our economy to work on game development full time if you're not making a profit out of it. Unless maybe you made an algorithm and sold it to somebody and they patented it and you got rich off of that and now you have all the time in the world. If that's the case, then don't worry about all this. Just go make games. It's no big deal. Anyway, moving on. So number one, the most difficult thing that I struggled with is marketing games, I think. I've tried a lot of things for the previous ones that I've developed, the previous 2 games that I developed, but I'm not too surprised by the results. Rebound didn't get many videos created on it. Project Velocity got more videos created on it. I don't know how many. I was able to market them through, I gave out free keys and so on. I tried to give out free stuff for Android, and I gave out free stuff for Steam. Rebound got released on Steam late because Steam Greenlight was still in place back when I released that one. So, I caught it just by the end of... So I got just this unlucky with how soon I was releasing it. But it got placed on Steam much later, 6 months later. It said your product was greenlit. I actually wrote a post about it a while ago. Anyway, those games were kind of hard to market, I will admit, because they were kind of mobile oriented and people don't typically go searching, oh man, I really want to play this type of game on mobile. But that's more of a Steam or console thing, and even more so in my opinion Steam, at least from maybe I'm biased, maybe I'm wrong, but I get the idea that on Steam somebody wants to play something that they can really appreciate, like those really fantastical indie games that are out there. There's a lot of really interesting stuff, and I think people I go through the Steam new releases and I check, is there something cool here today, or I'll check what are the indie releases of 2019 or 2018. I personally do go looking for them, so I imagine other users would. That's one thing I found it's a struggle, especially with mobile, is quite a big struggle with marketing. I personally, I don't have plans to do future mobile games at this time, but we'll see. As for marketing Steam games, I think marketing in general is it's pretty hard. I'm not exactly always sure what to work on or where to market. Here's my idea, or my next plan of attack, if you will, on how I think I should work on marketing in the future to improve on it. I think I should collect every single Reddit subreddit that's related to the kind of game that I would be releasing. I think I should set up a plan for releasing certain Twitter posts along development. Same with YouTube and possibly Instagram. I think also I should cater tell friends to tell friends and release early access keys for people to test them, give out free keys so people are like, oh, this game is cool, check it out, to their friends and so on. Definitely send it to streamers. I don't think I sent things to streamers because my games weren't really stream relevant, but send it to streamers and YouTubers. I sent my first 2 games to YouTubers, like I said earlier, but that's really important because that's where people go. They go to YouTube, they watch somebody, and they see, oh, that's pretty fun, then they go play it. That's kind of, I think, where marketing really is today, is watching other people play something and see how that goes. So basically make those plans ahead of time, and then, keep talking to people, keep figuring out what's wrong with the game, and then or keep figuring out what kind of people like the game by literally speaking to them. Imagine if you gave your game to somebody and physically spoke to them. How much insight would they have? They would actually have a lot of insight, rather than just sitting in the dev cave and clacking away at the keyboard like that, the beloved keyboard noises. I think that's kind of how I would attack marketing in the future, and I think that's kind of the direction I will be going now. I'm going to be working on several early releases before the game's actually out, to let people try it out and see if they like it and share it with their friends and so on. So that is actually a wrap. That's everything I'm going to talk about. That's all 5 of them. 5. You can also in the comments let me know what you're struggling with, if you agree with me, if you have an idea of how to improve in these 5 aspects, and so on. And also, if you want a free ebook on the tools that you need to create your first game. There's a link in the description, or you can go to omniriff.com and you'll see a pop-up in the bottom. It's over here actually, because it's mirrored. You'll see a pop-up there on the website. You can enter your email and it'll send a free ebook to you. Other than that, hit subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and I will see you guys in the next video, and have an awesome evening, morning, afternoon, and so on, whichever one that you're currently in during watching this video. And that's the end. So I'll see you guys later. Boom. Boom, we're done. That's a wrap. This is me spinning. Everybody likes to spin. Not in here. Back again, though.